four-time Emmy-nominated producer, Frank Pace, and retired New York City firefighter, 9/11 first responder, and Vietnam vet, Billy O'Connor.
Today's guests, two-time Olympic gold medalist, sportscaster, and women's sports activist, Donna de Varona.
My brother, what the hell happened to you? Your car didn't start?
Car didn't start. You know, I'm driving those sports cars, those Italian sports cars, the Fiat. An old Fiat. Just didn't start, brother. What can I tell you? Hey, but I'm there in spirit. I'm there in spirit.
You're unbelievable. That makes,
thank you.
That makes 2 out of 3 weeks. 2 weeks ago, you were snowed in on the hill.
Well, I'm trying.
Now, this week, your car didn't start. What the hell's your excuse going to be next week?
Well, you know, you got to give some kind of an allotment for that. You should be sending me money for that, like some kind of distant pay or something, you know, overseas pay or something.
So
how you doing, brother? Never mind me. How's everything with you? How's everything with the Bobbers? Everybody good, healthy?
Never mind you. Never mind me. Our guest today is Donna de Varona, two-time Olympic gold medal swimmer, pioneer sports journalist, women's sports activist, and member of the International Swimming Hall of Fame. She's got so many accolades, we could take up the entire show just giving her credits.
Just reading her awards, I was exhausted after reading all the awards she's gotten. It's unbelievable. I don't know when that woman ever sleeps. It's incredible what she's accomplished.
It really is. So I'm really, really, really looking forward to that.
Yeah, it's going to be a great interview, man. I'm sure. I mean, just meeting her is going to be an honor. You know, it's going to be cool.
I'm so glad we got that out of the way, so he doesn't have to interrupt somebody.
Like Derek.
Yeah.
We would never interview you.
I would never interrupt you, Derek. What makes you think I'd ever interrupt you?
History.
So what do you want to talk about today?
A lot going on, man. There's a lot going on in the news, but I don't know if I want to get into current events so much.
Well, we'll get into current events. We've been into current events the last couple of weeks, so we'll try to keep away from Donna today, current events today. But you know, it's a trying time for a lot of people right now. Still.
Yeah, no, it's a trying time, and of course, you know, looking at the news is it's depressing. I mean, you know, it's tough. You got grandkids, I got grandkids. No one wants to see, you know, all the shit that's going on. But hey, listen, every generation, from the time of thinking man, when man started walking, and said that the next generation is going to be worse, etc., etc. We're never going to make it, you know.
Could you quit rocking into this picture? Making me seasick. Holy Christ.
I tell you, I'm like a backup singer when I screw it. I'm good. If I was in the Pips, that'd be it. Like, you know, Gladys Knight.
Stop rocking.
I'm doing a backup singer here. All right, I'm stable.
Do a backup singer in his 80s.
Such as it is, I'm stable.
Currently rooted in your wheelchair.
I'm physically stable. I'm mentally stable.
Unbelievable. So, I see you're wearing red today. Any particular reason for that? The bright red? I thought I was going to see you today. I don't know.
The woman in red, the man in red?
Yeah, I just pulled it out of my closet. It was clean. That's my wife's not here. You know,
cleanest dirty shirt. The cleanest dirty shirt
I had. Yep.
How do you guys know it's red?
You know what? Bright red I can see. You can see bright red, right, Frank?
Yeah, but sometimes I can't tell red from orange.
Oh, I can't see orange at all.
And I stopped at a lot of red red street lights on the corner. I stopped at those. I stop at those. The cars behind me honk, honk, honk.
You do really? You know what? If I see, the only way I can tell it's a stoplight. Like red is no problem. The green doesn't look green to me. It looks white.
White.
Right.
So,
white.
Wow.
I'm going to try to go. I'll meet my demise going through a stoplight. going through a white light.
Yeah, it's a white light. It's you know, is
it really?
Listen, here's the good news. No, it doesn't look green at all. The good news is when you're colorblind, it's because you have too much testosterone. Which means, would you rather have lead in your pencil at this stage of the game, or would you rather be able to see fooge or whatever? I don't care about fuchsia. I want to have lead in my pencil. I want to have snap in my celery.
Yeah,
So,
well, you're lucky. You got something to write on.
that's right. I got somebody to write to. That's right. Exactly. I still got somebody to write to. That's the deal. Yeah, but I mean, who cares whether you can see fuchsia or mauve?
Wait.
Mauve. I love mauve. Do you have any idea what mauve
Wait,
is?
Bill. What?
Let him talk. Let him talk. Wait.
We got chastised for performing. So right now I feel like we're performing. So just let's have the natural conversation.
Okay, yeah, as natural as I get. Do you have any idea what mauve looks like?
No,
Because I ain't got a clue.
nor fuchsia.
Oh, fuchsia.
I know you can go fuchsia yourself, but I don't think that's the same thing.
I think fuchsia's something to eat. Fuchsia.
Hey, you know what? Frank's socks actually match his shirt too.
I know, isn't that amazing?
It is amazing.
Can you see that?
I mean, well, if you no, we can't see them, but it's pretty. I mean, they're identical in color.
And they're identical in style too, because the left matches the right, and the right matches the left. So they're interchangeable.
Wow.
You
Look
can
at
wear
this
the
guy.
left
He's
on the right foot and the right on the left foot.
Maybe we should change this into a fashion show.
it would be the shortest show in the history of the universe.
The first question that comes to mind is what they used to ask all the women that dyed their hair: does the rug match the drapes? You know?
Yep. I got a feeling that's not appropriate anymore.
No, probably not. Probably wouldn't get away with that.
You know.
But oh man, yeah. So I wish I was down here with you guys today. You know, what are you going to do? Car trouble.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you know.
Shoot the bloody thing.
Wait, guys. Billy, how many fights have you been in your life? Fist fights.
I mean, well, when I was a kid, up until I was about 15, I was probably in a fight every day. But after I got older, because of the bar business, I probably got in about 15 fights. You know, I had to jump the bar 10 or 15 times to throw people out.
Right.
Let me tell you this: I haven't been in a fist fight in 60 years.
60. Well, I tell you, I had a.
Well, let me finish it, because I never won a fight. So at 60,
You never won a fight.
I never won a fight. I got my ass kicked so many times when I was a kid. At 15, I said, "Fuck this! I ain't getting in a fight.
Right. I'm not the fighting type.
I'm not the fighting type."
When I had my joint out in Queens, right? Every now and then, you know, we were mobbed on Fridays and Saturday nights. I'd go into the bathroom and somebody would punch his fist through the sheetrock. It used to drive me crazy, because every Monday I had to have a guy come in and re-sheetrock the bathroom, you know, because these assholes would keep punching it. So I got so frustrated with this. It was going on for months, right? That I says, okay, before you put the sheetrock up this time, I says, put 1x4s or 1x2s, whatever they call them, behind the sheetrock, and put nails, 2 penny nails coming out. I said, I want them all up and down, and then put the sheetrock up, right?
Fucking A.
So it was a Wednesday night. Maybe it was like 12 people at the bar.
You want to save the rest of this story?
No.
No, run it.
There's
So-
2 interruptions now.
Maybe 12 people in the bar. And I hear a scream come out of the bedroom. Right? Now, this has been going on for months. That's costing me a fortune. I got to keep getting the sheetrock. So when I hear the scream, I says, aha, I got the bastard. So now I leap the bar and I got this axe handle, right? And this guy comes running out in the bedroom and he's holding his hand and he's like, ah! And I crack him with the axe handle, right?
Whoa.
You son of a bitch, you bastard. Because I'm taking it all out on this guy. Whether this is the guy or not, I don't know. But I'm hitting this guy with the axe handle. Now he's on the floor and I'm putting the boot to him, right? I'm so infuriated. I'm grabbing him by the hair and I'm dragging him to the door. And the other 12 people at the bar, of course, are now in the street, by the front door, watching what's going on, because I'm still hitting them with this axe handle. And the guy's running down the block and I'm chasing him. And I come back and the crowd separated like the Red Sea. It was like they just separated as I walked in. All I heard was, it's crazy. Because they couldn't figure it out how a guy could come out holding his hand to look like he's injured, and here I come and attack him, right? For no reason. I'm pounding him. And in their minds, they're saying, this guy's out of his mind. Like, this guy's hurt, and this guy just starts hitting him with an axe handle, Well, yeah, I mean,
That's
that's
crazy.
all. But there was a few of them, but always, you know, a couple of times you got to jump the bar. You got to throw people out. And I learned something. I learned something in the bar business. A guy's fighting with his wife. I don't care if the guy takes his fist and smacks him in the face, which is abominable, right? You get involved with a guy and his wife, and 2 minutes later, they're both hitting you. You can say, pal, don't hit your wife. And she'll say, mind your own business. And she'll be hitting you. And when you do get in a fight in a bar, when you're breaking up a fight in a bar, the worst thing you can do is get between two guys and go like this, put your hands up. Because you're going to get hit on both sides.
Holy shit.
The first thing you do is you look at the guy who's fighting, the two guys that are fighting. One guy will always be the aggressor. One guy's pushing to fight. The other guy doesn't really want to fight. You put your back to the guy who don't want to fight. And tell the other guy, hey, pal, you throw a punch, you're out of here, blah, blah, blah. Because now there's 2 against 1, and he doesn't really want to fight anyway. But if you get in the middle of it and put your hands up, you're going to get hammered from both sides. Just bar business wisdom. If you ever open a bar.
Hey, that's a freaking good phrase, too. Bar business.
Bar business wisdom.
Yeah. That's awesome. All right.
That's great. So, Derek, can you bring on Donna?
Will do.
Hey, Donna, how are you?
Fine, how are you?
Good. That's my partner, Billy O'Connor, and that's my other partner, Derek Harris. Welcome to a Mick, a Mook, and a Mike.
That's a mouthful, Donna. That's a mouthful. I'm making a Mook and a Mike.
That's for sure.
We're so happy to have you. I mean, it's
Delighted.
Thank you.
You've been so successful since you were so young, and it's for you to endure for all these years. It's just amazing.
I tell you, my first question to you is, after researching you, do you ever sleep? I mean, ever? Do you ever have a chance to close your eyes? Because I'm not kidding. I mean, I was exhausted reading your credits.
Well, thank you. No, I love to sleep, actually, you know, especially after all those years of getting up at 5:30 and 6 in the morning to train. I did radio for 8 years, too, and I had to get up early. But, you know, once you get up and the sand gets out of your eyes, it's good because you have the mornings to yourself. But I don't know. I think being an athlete really helped lay the foundation for my whole life.
Well, Derek knows this, but I coached girls soccer for a lot of years, and I played 2 sports in college. And when I became a producer, I always tried to hire athletes because athletes had what it took, that discipline to get up in the morning, to go to practice when you didn't want to go to practice, to do all the things that you didn't want to do. So I'm glad you say that because
you know, we've done some studies on you know, women athletes, and I used to tell my friends that didn't know them, you ought to hire them, because if you hire the right one, and a lot of athletes are great because they're focused, but they don't ever see a job as just 9 to 5. They see it as something they get involved in, and they're going to finish the task. No matter what it takes.
Right. Wow. Yeah. You know, I had my ex-girlfriend was a very accomplished Irish fiddle player. You know, she was a really good fiddle player. And I was talking to her one time about a ballerina, and she made a comment about a ballerina, and I said, what do you know about being a ballerina? You don't know anything about being a ballerina. How are you telling me something about her? And she says to me, it's like anything else.
Yes.
It's about pain, discipline, and sacrifice. You get out of it what you put into it.
They're absolute athletes, ballerinas. I mean, and just think of what they go through.
Yeah,
just like gymnasts. They're similar
like
to
your sister. Like your sister was a gymnast, right?
Oh, my sister's tough. Oh my gosh, I'm glad I never had to compete against her.
Yeah, but for our audience, we'll tell your sister's Joanna Kearns, who we also interviewed. We were fortunate enough to interview. And she was a gymnast before she became an actress.
Oh, she loves you guys. I mean, nobody knows she made the final Olympic tryouts for the '68 Olympics, and she was 5'9", and everybody else was 5'2". Wow. And she was also a really good swimmer, but she was bored, and a good diver.
And a good golfer.
Yes, very good golfer.
But she said she couldn't compare to you in the pool. So
well, maybe if you know, I'm a lot older than she is. I always kid her. I always say she's my older sister.
But how did you get so accomplished by the age of 13?
That's remarkable.
I don't know. I think part of it was I came along at the right place at the right time, with the right coaching and the right parents and the right genetics. But I grew up in California, and that's where the great swim coaches were that really volunteered their time, because we had been so soundly beaten during the 1956 Olympics in Melbourne that they borrowed the idea of age group swimming, where you compete within an age group so you can build confidence before you go to the next age group. And so they started that in Northern California, because if you remember, in those days they didn't have high school swimming for girls or college scholarships.
Wow.
So you had to learn that all, in a community program. And luckily for me in California, those programs were open. So that's how I made my way through the system.
So at 13, you were swimming in the Olympics in Tokyo?
No, in Rome.
Oh, I'm sorry, in Rome.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah,
4 years later, you were on the cover of Sports Illustrated, on the cover of Life magazine, voted the Women's Athlete of the Year in the
Look
States.
magazine.
Look magazine. So that's incredible.
Rocket ship.
Actually, I was on the cover of Sports Illustrated when I was 14.
Wow.
Unbelievable.
Because I'd come back from the Olympics in Rome, and I held the world record in my best event, but they didn't have it on the schedule until 4 years later. So I made it as a sprinter, helped qualify the team, the relay team, freestyle relay team, for the final. And these days you get a gold medal for that. Then you didn't. One of Michael Phelps's gold medals is from a trial that the team went on to win a gold medal. But it was just so magical. I was on the team with Muhammad Ali and
Wow.
Ralph Boston.
Wow.
Yeah, Wilma Rudolph, one of the best basketball teams ever. Rayford Johnson, who became a lifetime friend, and they all did. So that really motivated me to go 4 more years, because what an experience, right? 13.
How many hours every day were you in that pool to be able to do that at 13? It's remarkable.
And how old were you when you started swimming competitively?
Well, I grew up in Northern California, but I remember my first experience with water was riding on my dad's back in San Diego, crashing, learning how to dive under the waves. But then we moved to San Francisco, and that's where all the age group coaches were, luckily. And there was a big rivalry between the coach I first trained with and my second coach. So I started really training at 10, almost 11.
Wow.
So really, within 3 years,
2 years,
3 years, you were
mind-boggling.
You were swimming in the Olympics and setting world records. Come on,
it's a good way to deal. Luckily, I think I was strong because I used to play on the bars at school, and I used to hike in Northern California in Lafayette, the hills of Lafayette, which are the foothills of Mount Diablo.
Right.
And I followed my brother everywhere. He loved to play baseball. And so I think just when I got into the sport, I was already strong, because I'd hike in those hills after school every day until I started training.
I got to ask you, I always picture swimmers. I see some great swimmers. I always picture, long and lean. He's a swimmer. You're long and lean. You're 13 years old. How tall were you at that time? Does it help? Am I wrong? Does it help to be tall? Does it help to be tall? Long and strong? No.
Let her speak. Let her speak.
I want to know.
Oh, gosh. I was 5'2" and barely weighed 100 pounds.
Unbelievable.
Body weight to strength, though, I had it. I had body weight to strength. And I think I had really good technique, too, because my dad, I don't know if Joanna, my sister, Joanna Kearns, Growing Pains director, told you this, but our dad was the first athlete only to go to a championship Rose Bowl as a football player and row in a championship crew. And his crew set the world record in Poughkeepsie, which was the, Super Bowl of rowing when he grew up before World War II. So, and he probably would have gone to the Tokyo Olympics in 1940, but, they didn't happen because of the war. So here he was so many years later in Japan, living with a Japanese family when I'm winning my gold medals. And I did, when you're 17, do you think about that stuff? But, Oh, the Olympics
Wow.
made that possible. I don't think he'd ever go stay with a Japanese family as a World War II vet who jumped 11 times in combat for the Red Cross, if not for the Olympics.
Wow.
But he loved the Olympics.
That's mind-boggling. Unbelievable. I mean, that World War II, those guys were the real deal. I actually talked to my mother-in-law. My
Yeah.
mother-in-law now, she's 81. Her father was on the first ship that was going to invade Tokyo Bay after they dropped the bomb, right?
Oh my gosh.
And he told me, he looked, and this is something she told me, that it could only happen by somebody who was there. They looked up on the hills where Tokyo was dug in to defend, and they were supposed to hang a white sheet next to every bunker, and it looked like one white sheet, one sheer
Wow.
white sheet going up the whole cliff.
Wow. That's something.
Yeah, I mean, so,
Yeah.
I mean,
And
there's
those
so
guys
much.
didn't talk about it a lot. My dad didn't talk
Never.
about it.
My father
Yeah.
never talked about it. Never.
No, they didn't.
My dad was in Lady Gulf, and he never talked about it. He was on the island when Ernie Pyle was killed. He never talked about any of that stuff.
No, I maybe it would have been good for them to do that because I think
I think it would have been better.
suffered from post-traumatic stress, but
Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
they were the greatest generation, as Tom Brokaw wrote about. They came back and they gave back. They created parades. They volunteered for things. They were.
Because
I remember we always had somebody living in our house because they needed a place to stay, to train, or whatever. My mom and dad were like that.
Yeah.
They were great people.
and Billy, when Billy came back from Vietnam, it was the exact opposite. You guys didn't have any
Oh.
parades. You guys were spat upon almost.
No, I went to Vietnam for the USO. I'll never forget it.
What were you over there, Donna?
I was 69.
Oh, that's when I was over there, 69 to 70.
Yeah, I was.
You want to travel with the Bob Hope Show, were you?
No, I can't sing or dance. I have no. I'm not a lady.
Come on, I mean, there's something you can't do. There's something you don't know how to do. Come on, I don't want to try that.
No, I can't carry a tune.
So
Poor people that had to go to practice with me when I sang to the radio. Oh, I must have ruined their morning.
we don't have a chance to ask this very often, but when you were getting ready to race in the 400 individual medley in '64,
Yeah,
what was the pressure like? Because you came in there as a prohibitive favorite, didn't you?
unbelievable. Hard to sleep at night. I remember.
Wow.
I had to win. I mean, I don't know what would have happened in my life if I hadn't in my mind. But luckily, I went into that race. I had broken the world record right before the Olympics, so I had confidence going in. But I always competed afraid, thinking that somebody in lane 1 or lane 8 would have the swim of their life. So I never was overconfident. I think that helped me. Yeah, the pressure was immense. It really was, and I can only imagine what Simone Biles or Michaela Schifrin went through. I can relate to it, but I didn't have the social media issue, and I wasn't the GOAT. The single GOAT like those two women were.
You weren't. You were at that time. You just didn't know it.
Right. Yes. I had company.
So
Correct me if I'm wrong. You won that race by 6 seconds?
Yeah,
6
I did.
seconds? That's like, I know part of the analogy. That's like Secretariat. I mean, 6 seconds in the
Yeah,
pool?
You don't want to give your competition hope. You want to go in.
6 seconds.
Yes.
That's
well, you said
mind-boggling.
you said you thought the people in lane 1 or lane 8 would have the swim of their lives. I'm savvy enough to know about swimming. Lane 3, 4, and 5 were the people that have the best times, right? And lane 1
Right.
and lane 1s and lane 8 are the
Yeah,
slowest
they're the
times.
last qualifiers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So
But you never know. You can watch the Olympics. Like in Tokyo, there was a lane from lane 8. Somebody won a sprint. So you just.
yep.
I don't think you can ever be overconfident as an athlete.
Correct. So did you feel relief or joy when you won the gold medal?
I felt relief. My first
Isn't that
gold
crazy?
medal was in the relay, so I would have felt joy because I challenged to be on that gold medal relay team. Our coach wanted to keep us sharp because we had a month of training before, and I used to break world records in training because that's how much I focused. And so when I got to Tokyo, I got to challenge for the relay, and there was a lot of controversy over that. and I was put on the relay, and I had the second fastest time, which made me feel good because I belonged on that relay.
Yeah.
I would say so.
Yeah.
So-
I was, I'm sorry,
Go ahead,
Frank,
Ben.
go ahead.
You go ahead.
Yeah, talking about your father, David, the way you did about him being what he did in World War II, I'm wondering because that you and Joanna were both so accomplished at such a young age, her a gymnast and you as a swimmer, did he drive you or was it you self-motivated to impress him or was there any kind of,
No.
connection between it?
He just felt that because sports had saved his life. His father left him when he was 11, and they moved from place to place. His mother was legally deaf, and sports is what got him a scholarship to Berkeley so he could compete and get an education. And so I think that's how he knew that he wanted his kids to grow up. He wanted to give them sport and structure. He used to say you keep them tired, hungry, and focused. And
I love it.
But when I wanted to swim, he said, "Are you sure?" I was a rower, But he did say to me, "If the family's going to sacrifice, because we didn't have a lot of extra money around, you're gonna train like you would if you were going to the Olympics." And I didn't know what the Olympics were, but I said, "Okay." He said, "No sleepovers. Keep your grades up. Be focused. You're going to have to sacrifice if you want to be good." And we'll have a conversation in about 3 months to see if you really want to do this. And we never had that conversation.
Well,
Back to pain, sacrifice, and discipline. Huh? You get out of it what you put into it.
Yeah. Life. That's life's lesson right there.
so
But you carried that through. I mean, this obviously it's worked for you, but you carried that through about what sports can do for you in other areas of your life.
Yeah. Well, I was very fortunate during my time that ABC's Wide World of Sports was created by Roone Arledge. And ABC was the new network on the block. And he looked at sports and thought, well, we don't have to pay rights fees. We can't compete with CBS and NBC for football and these other things. But amateur sports, we were amateur. So, he cobbled together this great show called The Wide World of Sports, where often we were up against car racing or with car racing, and he'd switch back and forth. And I became, the very first season, they squeezed my race on, and I won a gold medal. And from then on, Roone was very loyal to his people. He felt that, sports is personality driven, and you build up that person. So I would confer with the producers after that and tell them what races to follow. Sometimes they put a camera under my lane with a scuba diver to get another angle, and I just kind of became part of that family. And then so it was natural at 17 when there were no scholarships for women and I wanted to put myself through school, that I picked up the phone and said, I can't bear to quit my sport. So if you let me cover swimming with Jim McKay or who was ever in the booth, I can do it. And they were very worried because the minute I accepted $1 or used I could never go back. I could never say at 18, man, I'm just at my peak. I want to train for another Olympics. So I waited a month and I called them. I said, I want to do it. And they sent me I had to get a work permit because I was 17, and they threw me on live with Jim McKay covering men's swimming at Yale University.
and you became the first woman ever to be a journalist on television.
Well, I think there were others, but I got, because it was television and it was consistent, I was I could say I'm the first. I was the youngest for sure. I was 17. And the truth is, it took me 10 years to really get off the pool deck and find my way in broadcasting.
But at least you had the patronage of Roone Arledge, and
I did. You got to have that, don't you?
Boy, you sure
Gotta have your champion.
You sure do. But before we get into your career, you won the individual medley in '64, and Janet Evans won it in '88. No American swimmer has won it ever since. And same thing with the 4x100 4x100 relay. You guys won it in '64, and the U.S. hasn't won it since 2000 in Atlanta. Why do you think the fallout? Do you think the the world has caught up to the U.S., or the U.S. has fallen off?
Do you know that there were 67 individuals who won medals in Tokyo that took advantage of scholarship opportunities in our universities.
I don't.
Wow.
I don't doubt it.
We train our rivals, is what happens, and there's just an opportunity. Yeah, 67 medals won by, athletes that have trained here that have gone back and represented their countries. Not to mention the Chinese athlete.
Yes, I was just about to ask you that. On that note, how do you feel about the Chinese athlete? I mean, she competed for China and was born here. How do you feel about that? Obviously it's her choice, but
it's her choice. I mean, she's making a ton of money. And the truth is, you only have very little time to take advantage of
small window
platform. And maybe she could do good, and we certainly need good ambassadors between the U.S. and China right now.
And I'll tell you that
that role, and she's very smart.
I'll tell you, there are a lot of people in a lot of sports, especially women, and I'm going to give you credit for this, Donna, because this is the 50th year anniversary of Title IX, and you are very influential in the passing of Title IX. But a lot of times, people don't think they can make the United States team, so they go compete in their father's country or their mother's country. I had a girl who played soccer for me in high school. She competed for the Mexican national soccer team because she didn't think she could compete for the States. We had another girl who went to Stanford who played for the New Zealand national team. So a lot of that's a common focus.
Well, it's harder to make our Olympic team than sometimes making a final at the Olympics.
Absolutely.
It depends on the sport, but we have such depth. And so a lot of athletes choose to do that. She was a lightning rod because it was China and what's going on with the U.S. diplomatically with China right now. She stuck out, but she's very accomplished and articulate. Hopefully in the future, she'll bridge a gap and a bridge between us and China.
Yeah, you were just over there. So you said before that she was very smart. Zhu Yi, right? Is her name Zhu Yi? Am I pronouncing that right?
I think so.
And she's very smart. Do you think that she did that deliberately, is to take advantage of that small window, monetarily wise, or do you think was it scripted? Do you think?
I think there were a lot of reasons. I think she's proud of her Chinese heritage. Her mother probably had a lot to do with that. Because athletes can have sponsors now, name, image, and likeness, all those kind of things. I think she knew that in that market she could stand out. So I think it was a career decision, which in my time you didn't have that option.
But she probably had to make that decision. She didn't make that decision just this year, did she? She probably had.
No, I don't. She's got commercial relationships all over China.
Yes, and she probably had to make that decision 2 or 3 years ago.
Sorry, I don't know who that is, but.
That's all right. Thank God it wasn't me. I thought it was me. Frank will kill me.
Probably my husband who always called it. I got it. Yeah, I'll turn off my phone. Sorry.
Yeah, thank God it was you.
And she may have had to make that decision when she didn't think she was as accomplished enough to make the U.S. team as well.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. She certainly was amazing.
Let me ask you another question, Donna, because you had to be so protective of your amateur status. Like, you were concerned that the slightest bit of money and the whole ball game was over. How do you feel about the pros competing in the Olympics now? Do you think it's better? It's worse? I mean, the NBA strikes me number one. The first thing that comes to mind, we send out pro basketball players.
Well, when the Dream Team was welcomed in Barcelona, the place went crazy. And David Stern was so smart about how he marketed that. I just remember all the athletes going over to the Dream Team because they thought, wow, they're here. And we always had this debate, because the Soviets, when they were Soviets, would treat all athletes like professionals.
Right.
We still have athletes here, depending on the sport. It's just hand them out. Yeah. I mean, Simone Biles, her mother almost had to mortgage her furniture for her first Olympics.
Wow.
And so, the feeder system depends on the sport and the level.
But
So I don't know. I mean, I really wish our hockey players, who I adored, the ones because our pros didn't
That
go,
was the greatest.
they were great. They big hearts. They almost made it through, but they didn't.
It's
So,
great.
let's talk about Title IX a little bit.
Yeah.
When in 1972, when it came about, you were instrumental in passage of it. Did you ever think that you would see the day 50 years later? First of all, could you believe it's 50 years already?
Yeah.
And second of all, could you see the day when the World Cup soccer team would be granted equal pay with the men?
Well, you know what's interesting? I have to be clear. I was there right after the passage, and I've been a big part of protecting it and supporting it. I was in Washington after the Munich Olympics because I covered those, and I got involved in Title IX at that point, and in how to implement it. All the Supreme Court decision to kind of negate it, we had to go back and get the Civil Rights Restoration Act passed. There's been a lot of battles, but Title IX really did a great thing, and it was really passed to get rid of quotas in colleges and embolden women so that we could bring out their talents in the educational system. And as it applied to sport, we were granted a separate and safe category because there's no way we could have competed with the men. And of course, that's a big discussion, going on now about
Transgender.
biological men, biological women being in the women's category. But it's been really wonderful. I mean, I was chairman of Women's World Cup in '99, the FIFA World Cup, and we went for the big stadiums, and everybody said, "Oh, you're going to have to. It's going to be embarrassing. People won't come." And it was such a success. What I like about what happened with the women's soccer team now is that the men stood up for the women too. They said, "Listen, the women have elevated the game in the U.S. They're the ones that market it. They're the ones that come back with the world championships and the FIFA championships and the Olympic medals." So I think this is a new day. But it's been 50 years.
Yeah. And you're actually being modest because you were chairman of that committee, and that was the most successful women's sporting event in the history of the world. So
that was great. I mean, I couldn't have asked for a better experience. And I turned it down the first time because I thought there's no way I can balance two little kids and survive at ABC. I was trying to get my contract renewed. Well, they solved that problem when they didn't hire me back at age 50. And then I devoted all my time to Women's World Cup and took it back to ABC. So when Roone Arledge called me after the final and we broke into the network, we didn't show the news. He said, "What do you want done?" I said, tell Eider to bring me back. I love doing what I'm doing. Yeah. Well, they brought me back for 2 years and then it was over. But hey, it was a great run.
That World Cup was fantastic. It was in the Rose Bowl. Derek, I don't know whether you were there. You may not have been here in LA, but I live in Pasadena, so the Rose Bowl is right down the street from my house. And my daughter was at that time 14, and she had a great time. And I still got the photo of Brandy Chastain on her knees in the sports bra. I had Brandy.
She was 14. She didn't win the Olympic medal. She's a bit of a slacker, isn't she?
Well, I had fun.
14.
I had fun because my dad had won the Rose Bowl victory for Cal.
Yes.
And there I was, probably my finest sporting moment, honestly, aside from the Olympics. But there I was in the Rose Bowl on the pitch with, the team, and, looking back, nobody believed in it, and we gained the momentum, and my gosh, at the quarterfinal against Germany, we were able to bring back, we were down 2-0 at the half, and I got the president and the first lady there, Clinton and Hillary and Chelsea, and I'm sitting there at the half thing, and the president says to me, "Well, what do you think?" And I said, "Well, we're really strong the second half," and, usually it's a death sentence if you're 2 down at the half, but we came back 3-2.
As I recall, it was about 105 in the Rose Bowl that day also. It was hot.
It was so hot. And then we went into overtime. Right?
Yeah.
And a shootout. So it was
then we lost our best player, who was Michelle Akers.
She was I think she's still suffering, still suffering from that. And I remember looking at the president because he came to the final, and the question was, should he go to the locker room to greet the Chinese? And absolutely, that was a great PR move for us, for him to go to the Chinese and congratulate them. And then he came back to congratulate our women's team.
In the fall of 2007, you did a documentary, didn't you, on Title IX?
Yes, I actually wanted to talk about how Title IX, because people don't think of it, how we've impacted other nations through individuals such as Nawal El-Munawakil. She was the first Muslim African woman to win a gold medal, and she won it in '84 at our Olympics during the LA Games. She won it in the hurdle event. And on that day she won, the king said every young child born that day that's female should be named Nawal. So I went to Morocco and met her and put an ad out for young parents to bring their daughters who they named Nawal to meet Nawal. And this was after the 84 Olympics. And, they were lined around the block. She went on to be an executive member of the International Olympic Committee and has had a great influence on, now we almost have the equal number of events on the women's program than the men. And those are the kind of leaders that have experienced what we've experienced here, and they take what they know to her country. In Morocco, she started a marathon run to elevate her culture.
I mean,
So-
as you talk about things that you've accomplished, I'm even more amazed than I was when we started. Because,
Yeah, I know.
Like,
It's
like
great.
Billy said, I mean, we've both known of Donna de Varona since we were kids. Billy was a fanboy, if you can, of Donna de Varona. But it's just amazing the things that you've accomplished.
Well, you mentioned Secretary of State Clinton, former Secretary of State Clinton,
Yeah.
and she had nominated you to be employment of women through sports, the head of the employment of women through sports.
Yeah.
And I read about you with King Prince Faisal of Jordan.
Yeah.
You're just
Yeah.
talking about Morocco, and then Tony Blair. I mean, you've really did some damage out there, girl.
Well, that's the power of sport. I mean, Faisal's initiative is to bring children from divided communities together, and through sport and conflict resolution, teach them how to be leaders to go back into their communities and teach peace. And as you know, Jordan is swamped with refugees, and more so now.
Yeah.
And they're, as he said, I'm between Iraq and a hard place because they are. They're situated in such a difficult place, and they're not rich by any means. But he is a member of the International Olympic Committee, and he's been very influential in, really advocating for more women too in leadership and on the field of play. So, you meet these people. Where would I meet them if I hadn't been involved in sport? Probably not. But it's so enriching.
It's incredible. We touched upon the pressure of youth sports.
Yes.
With Simone Biles, Naomi Osaka, recently, Katie Meyer, the young goalkeeper from Stanford who took her life. How do you feel we put too much pressure on the kids now, or how do you feel about that?
Well, I think you can, if you have the right coaching and you're open to sports psychologists. In my day, that was a no-no, and we're taught, if you're taught the old way, that if you show any vulnerability, you're weak, that's a problem. And I know our Olympic Committee, I was voted on the board of the executive board of the Olympic Committee during COVID by the alumni group, because 2 spots opened up. And the one thing that we do provide is sports psychologists. And so when Simone had that issue, and I think it had to do a lot with PSD from the Nasser situation where she was abused. And then right before the Olympics, I think she was exploited by people that wanted to tell her story for whatever reason. Yes, there's a lawsuit, but she had to relive that in Washington, D.C. at a hearing. And so all of a sudden, she's got all this pressure on her, and that stuff, stress brings that out. And then she lost her place in the air. They call it the twisties. And, somebody said to me, well, can't she just suck it up and get back on the beam? I said, listen, she could suck it up and get back on the beam and kill herself. If I'm a swimmer, I can just dive in the water and nobody's going to see it. So actually what she did was a gift to her team, because when she stepped out, it opened the door for, her teammate to win gold and then for the team to get on the podium. But if she'd hurt herself, she may have cost the team a medal. And then she was brave enough to talk about this conversation. But I don't think we do enough mental training with our kids about you can express yourself. There's a safe place for you to go if you're feeling the pressure. We're doing that with the Olympic Committee, but not every athlete takes advantage of that. And actually Simone did. So she did get back up and compete. And she's, performing in exhibitions throughout the country now.
Yeah, and I think maybe Naomi Osaka's bowing out of her tennis tournament maybe made Simone's choice easier, because
probably, and Michael Phelps talking about it, or even earlier.
Right.
I mean, here's this guy who's ever going to reach the standards he did, but for him to open up and say, "Listen, I got problems. I really had problems, and we've got to talk about this."
You talked about that small window. How much courage it took for Simone Bowles to say, okay, I've trained all my life for this moment, but the moment isn't now. That takes a tremendous amount of courage to say,
It does. And, that's why it's so hard to win a gold medal. Look at Mikaela Shiffrin. I don't know, what she's going to do now. I don't know. I heard that her mother, and that ski group, isn't a real open to sports psychologists and mental support, but I hope she does it, because she's an amazing person. But both said, I didn't know people loved me. I didn't, because they feel they've let everybody down. And they're used to the old coach that says, I don't care, you crash gate, get up and do it again.
Right.
And there's got to be something in between there.
Yeah.
The governor of Iowa just signed a state law that banned transgender women from competing against women, natural-born women. I know you've taken a very public stand on it, which I commend you, by the way. Why don't you tell us a little about that?
Well, I've taken a stand with a working group that includes Nancy Hogshead McCarr, triple gold medalist, civil rights lawyer. She won 3 gold during the Los Angeles Olympics.
In Jacksonville, Florida, I might add.
Yeah, and she had to compete against East Germans that were pumped up with steroids in her career. Martina Navratilova, who's sacrificed a lot for coming out when she did, who's very much interested in this, and actually been working for 2 years on policy. And the reason why we worked on policy was you don't want to demonize anybody in this culture. And you want everybody to have a sport experience, but you have to have reasonable policy that's fair. We worked 50 years to build women's sports, and we still miss out on over $1 billion in the collegiate level in the way of scholarships, funding, access to recruitment, and facilities. So we're not there yet, but how do you balance it? And clearly the International Olympic Committee, in Bach's interest in being inclusive, accepted a policy that wasn't really researched by science, saying you could, after puberty, like this Leah Thomas, you only need 1 year of testosterone suppression, and you can qualify in the women's category. Well, we know that that's not good enough. That sex-linked advantages after puberty depends on the individual, depends how long they've gone through puberty and trained. Leah trained with the men for 3 years, which is an advantage. Trained against men, competed against men. And Leah abided by the rules, so I'm not going to demonize Leah. I'm going to look at the NCAA and the International Olympic Committee and say, you didn't do your homework and you were manipulated. And the IOC has now backed off the testosterone policy, basically said it's up to each individual sport, which it's going to be very difficult. And the truth is there are some sports where it doesn't matter. Equestrian, sailing, motocross, get in the car. But when it comes to physical head-to-head competition, there's big issues and safety issues and locker room issues.
I never understood why they just can't have a transgender games.
They don't want that.
They don't want them. The athletes don't want them.
All you have to do is talk to Caitlyn Jenner, who's a friend of mine. I used to watch Caitlyn train when Caitlyn was Bruce, and I was at the Olympics when Jenner won, and Jenner came on the air and said, listen, this is unfair. I don't compete. Caitlyn said, I do not compete in women's tournaments. I don't have any circulating testosterone, but I have legacy, and it's not fair. And we have other issues in our transgender community that are really serious. They have a higher suicide rate. By the way, most of kids in that age group, there's a higher suicide rate than ever before. And Caitlyn said, what is Leah thinking? This is supposed to be fair. I believe in the Olympic ideals, and Caitlyn does too. So let's be fair. And it's really gotten pretty ugly, and it's not right. And you know what? Before puberty, how many little kids do you see, boys and girls, playing with each other in soccer?
Yes, of course.
So we have to bridge the gap here. That's what our group was doing. We're trying to find reasonable policies that are fair. But nobody wants to be fair now. Each has the side. So we have to.
I think that's the problem with society. Nobody wants to be fair. Everybody's on the side.
Not everybody. There's a silent. People are waking up to this in this country. They didn't realize what was going on, and I think that I'm middle. I feel like I don't have a party. I feel like I believe in everybody should have an education. We should have the benefit of sport. But I don't fall into one bag or another, and I think there are a lot of people like me out there.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I'm a fan of Mark Twain, and I don't belong to any organized party. I'm a Democrat. I'll steal Twain's line there because that's about where things are at.
Yeah.
So Donna, you would be on a Rushmore of women pioneers and athletes, along with Billie Jean King. Can you tell us a little about Billie Jean King and what she's meant to the movement?
Well, I think every tennis player should give her tithing, because and her group that got together and said, listen, we're going to start our own direction. We're going to start our own tour, and basically brought the male-dominated tennis establishment into a new reality. And it's taken years. And she's been a mentor to many tennis players. And she's been mentoring our ice hockey team and our soccer efforts as far as going, because she says you got to have the paycheck. She's been right. And she's inspirational. If you've ever been in her presence, she could sell you sand in the desert. It's done so many things for so many people. And I actually, when she beat Bobby Riggs, I was with ABC at the time, and Rune what do you think? But he didn't need my opinion, because Rune always saw the bigger picture. And this was during the height of the feminist movement. And, Billie Jean made it fun. It was fun, but it was serious, because it was an
It was serious.
Bobby was an old guy and he was a gambler. Yeah. And what did it prove? But everybody was into it. And, so I think it was very important. Well, and I reached out to her after that and said, we've got to start we got to start a foundation to protect athletes. And it wound up.
You talk about pressure. When Bobby Riggs beat Margaret Court in the first match, he was an old man, and he beat the reigning queen of tennis at her own game. So I think a lot of people still thought Bobby Riggs had a chance against Billie Jean, but she
trained for that. That was really serious. And I reached out to her after that, and I said, we got to, like I said, start a foundation. And she put up the money, and we kind of struggled with what is a foundation. And then she got really busy with tennis, and I took over as president. We had a volunteer executive director, Eva Auchincloss, who worked for no money. She was a real fan of Billie Jean's. And I started the dinner and research, and we did a big dinner in New York. We went to the plaza. I think these days they never would have let us rent it, but we did, and we filled the room, and that was our big fundraiser, which continues to this day.
You were the first president of the Women's Foundation
Yeah.
with Billie Jean. That was
Yeah.
So you went from producer to commentator to producer to Roone Arledge's advisor.
Yeah.
I mean, you even produced the documentary. Is that true?
Yeah, we talked about that.
documentary.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what the question is, but I know that, I did leave ABC a few times to go out and grow more. And I think as an expert on swimming, it was great. But I got to the point after the 76 Olympics where I really couldn't break into something else. So I left ABC to go work in the U.S. Senate because I had been appointed by President Ford to work on an Olympic committee. And I needed to get the bill passed to restructure our Olympic committee. So I did that, and I think Roone really respected that. Then I went to NBC. I was supposed to be the first co-host woman ever of an Olympics, and we didn't go.
Yeah.
Carter.
So
And then
That was the boycott.
what's next for Donna de Varona?
Well, I'm trying to write a book. Really hard.
Billy laughs because he and I have written 3 books, and it's really hard.
I know. I need you guys can help me write it. I don't like to be alone all day. I am enough, and I wrote like 13 chapters, and of course my friends think it's great. So then I got to go to people that really can give me an opinion, and there's a lot to write about, right? But how do you thread the needle?
And then comes all the rewriting and all the rewriting and the editing and
I know. I just spoke actually at the unveiling of the Title IX stamp day before yesterday in DC, and I worked on that speech. You're trying to cram 50 years into 4 minutes and do the right thing and hit the right points and not be too political, but political enough, and so I know what that's like.
yeah.
Not just 50 years, your 50 years.
Right.
Cram your 50 years, not 50 years, your 50 years.
Which are like
Big difference.
150 in people years.
I'd hate to have to edit that. I'd have to edit your 50 years and cut it down to one book. I tell you that. It should look like the Encyclopedia Britannica. For God's sake.
Guys are great.
Well, I laud you because I know that's a big effort and it'll take a lot of work. But I have a sense. My sense is that you'll persevere and we'll be reading that book in no time. Well,
why don't you guys just come? We'll just sit around for all summer and we'll write together. How's that?
No problem, kid. Where do I sign? I'm in. I'm total scholarship. It won't cost you a nickel. Just let me just smile on the back cover.
Derek, do you have any questions for Donna?
I do. I got a hi, Donna.
Hi.
Got a couple questions. Well, so you talked about your family, your parents, your dad in particular, sort of instilling some values. I was wondering if there were some like a couple of foundational values that you could share with us to help athletes that are competing now at the level that you were competing at. And then I have some other follow-up questions to that as well.
Well, I think people do ask me if I was pushed and did I own it. I think when you look at an athlete that reaches those heights, you got to own it. Or you get hurt, or you won't do it.
Right.
I think you have to be open. My big thing, one of the reasons why I wanted to have a foundation for athletes is that when you retire from a sport, you hit a black hole. And you got to get through that. And you've got to take with you, you got to recognize what you learned as an athlete. I started a program with Ernst & Young to help athletes transition out of sport into professions. And we put 130 athletes through our program. They came in, we did screen them. We wanted to know what their education was, what their motivation was. And we paired them up with women from the International Women's Forum that were successful in business. And they would mentor them for the year. And a lot of them have gone on to do great things. But if you don't have that kickstart, a lot of times they're lost. And we've seen it with professional football players and baseball players, because you're on this one train and everybody else is in the workplace. So I think we need to accelerate that. My dad always said, you got to work hard and you got to stay focused and don't get a big head.
Right.
and understand it's short, and it's not about the fame, it's about the process and the goal. And that's the way I raised my son and daughter. My son was captain of the Brown swim team, and he had an Olympic dream, but it wasn't going to happen for him. But I kept saying, it's these values you're going to take to the workplace.
Right.
What you learned here is the most important thing. And the leadership really helped him get his first job. And it's working for him. He's 33 now, and I'm going to be a grandmother in June. And
Lovely. Welcome to the fold.
Oh, it's great.
It's the best. It's the best.
I know, I can hardly wait.
What an absolute pleasure to interview you. Really, I was a fan, but I'm a much bigger fan now after I did a little research. And really, really a pleasure to have you on. And
Wait, Billy, don't wrap up just yet.
I'm not wrapping up.
Question.
I'm just flattering you.
You got to jump in with those questions. Yeah.
Okay. So, when you were talking earlier in the interview about being so young and being in the position that you were in as a young athlete, what did you do between practices and between performances? Like physically and also mentally? Like what sort of things did you talk to yourself, or did you say to yourself to keep yourself motivated, keep yourself positive? Were there any particular?
And also relaxed. Keep yourself relaxed.
Yeah.
I think every athlete goes through different phases. I mean, when you're going after a goal and you're young and naive, that's all you see.
Right.
And then all of a sudden you're a world champion at 13, and everybody's in the hunt for you.
Right.
You have to never swim or compete not to lose. You've got to keep goals ahead. Otherwise, it's not helpful for your psyche. And you have to have balance. I mean, I was in my school play. I did go out one night a week. I love to read. I love music. My whole life wasn't just around the sport. In fact, when I came back from my first Olympics, I was entering my freshman year, and my brother was a senior, and I was very close to him, my older brother. And he played football, and I wanted to have a high school experience. So I trained by myself that summer. And I did, I had a very difficult time in the pool because the competitors were catching up with me, but I would never trade that year. And then that following year, I moved to Santa Clara to swim with that team. And then right before the Olympics, nobody knows at the time, nobody explained it to us, but I was really becoming a woman, and I couldn't get better because my body was busy maturing.
Right.
And I worked harder than ever, and my times weren't coming down.
Wow.
And I just said to my dad, I don't know if I can do it. And he gave me the room. He said, if you want to quit, it's up to you. Just think, you might think about what you're giving up. But he never, he didn't push me through that doubt. He let me figure it out. And I think that was really important because I could own my decisions.
Well, you also figured out a way to get a college diploma. Like my partner there, Billy O'Connor, who graduated from college at the age of 62.
Yeah.
You graduated from college at the age of 39. You went back. You went back to UCLA. What gave you the motivation to go back and finish that degree?
Well, I always wanted it, but here I am, a political science major, and I'm in the inner cities working for Humphrey, working with Wilma Rudolph in the cities, the 2 summers where our cities were rioting, much like what's gone on in our culture now. And I'm going back to UCLA, and I'm a political science major, and I'm not learning anything. And I'm learning things in other areas, but I'm living it. So
right, you're there.
And I'm working. So I left 2 classes short, made one up, but when my transcript came out, they said I still needed 2. And what made the turning point was I was at a big dinner, 1,000 people, and I was introduced as a graduate of UCLA in front of all these people by this athletic director. And I said, I didn't graduate. I can't claim it. I was there 4 years. And she said, you got to be kidding. We got to get you graduated. So I wrote a letter to the head of the department. He was still there. And I'd already worked on the Amateur Sports Act and Title IX in Congress. And I said, I'll just write 2 papers. I mean, I've been in politics this whole time. And I did. And then I graduated in 86.
That's great.
And
good.
since you have 5 honorary doctorates, you might want to just mention that along the way. 5 honorary doctorates, it's not bad.
Well,
Thank you.
And you guys better get to work.
yeah.
Boy, you ain't saying nothing.
We've taken enough of your time. We're honored that you've given us this much time, Donna. It was, a privilege.
Great.
Billy, do you have any last questions?
I'd love to crack a 6-pack with you and just sit around and talk right now. I'll tell you that right now.
We'll get Joanna, my sister, and then we'll all sit around and laugh.
That's great. Thank you.
I don't see her first. She's too busy.
Thank you again so
That's
much,
great.
Joanna.
Thank you so much.
You've been
Thank you. You take
an
care.
actual dream. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Well,
The best. Look at that. That's just great. She was just terrific. What a joy. It's easy to see, Frank, why she went so far in television. I mean, besides being knowledgeable, just personable and just real.
Yep.
Real.
yep, real indeed. That was terrific. I mean, you know what? I can't even get pissed at you because your car didn't start. I don't know.
If I write down his book, I get a real car.
Yeah. You get a real car.
There might be royalties attached to that. I'm going to get a real car.
Yeah. Well, I got your royalty check here for you.
By the way, do you really?
Yeah.
That's good. That's good. That means I might be able to get another T-shirt or
You might
something like
you
that.
might be able to fill up your tank a couple of times, but not too many. Not too many.
You're the man. She was a great guest. Thanks for securing that. Thank Joanna.
You bet.
Joanna Kearns. I mean, she made that possible.
Yep. Yep. With that, I'll see you in the studio next week.
Yeah, brother, I'll be there.
If your car starts.
Hey, if I got to crawl on my hands and knees through broken glass, I'll be there. It's the cut of my jib, Frank. The cut of my jib.
Can you just cut him off in mid? just cut him off in midstream.
That would be fun.
That would be funny. You want to try it?
Dude.
Oh, once you hit.
I just wanted to say one more.
See you next week, folks.
Next week's guest, acclaimed film director and columnist Mel Damsky.
We'll see you next week.